The Denver Broncos have 3 players who have been named starters to the 2025 NFL Pro Bowl games. We'll highlight why the Broncos are getting more recognition from a lot of people around the world. We'll break that down and much more here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's happening, Broncos Country? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you know it is your team every day for all the Broncos news, content, coverage, analysis, and more that you get every single day, all year long, through the season, through the offseason. We got you covered here. Thanks to all the everydayers out there in Broncos Country. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. Subscribe or follow so you never miss out on what's going on with your favorite team. I'm Cody Roark, Broncos beat reporter for Mile High Sports, joined as always by Sayre Bedinger, site expert, predominantly orange.com. And here's what we got in store for you on today's jam-packed episode of the show. We'll wrap things up by talking about why the Broncos' performance on Sunday, whether they win or whether they lose, will set the tone for the offseason and a potential revamp in 2025. On top of that, we'll talk about the biggest keys to victory in Sunday's game against the Chiefs. We're going to kick things off today by highlighting 3 Broncos players who were named as starters to the 2025 NFL Pro Bowl games. We'll go over snubs and alternates. You get all that here on today's episode of the show, which is brought to you by our friends over there at PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code, all lowercase, LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Sayre, my friend, the Pro Bowl games, they announced the starters for this, and obviously 3 Denver Broncos will be representing here. And look, I think once again, just even knowing what the alternate spread looks like here for Denver, a lot of people seem to be paying a lot of attention here to these Broncos here in 2024 in terms of fan voter recognition. There's obviously some snubs here, but overall, it's nice to see that Denver's getting some recognition, even though the Pro Bowl isn't what it used to be, unfortunately.
It's not what it used to be, but it's still great recognition for some of these guys. Obviously, cornerback Pat Surtain leading the way. Cody, feels like he should have probably made the Pro Bowl every year of his NFL career, but I believe as a rookie, he was one of those snubs that we're going to talk about in a little bit here. But other than that, Pat Surtain every year kind of punching his ticket to the Pro Bowl games. Marvin Mims has made the Pro Bowl now in consecutive years to open up his NFL career. And as a return specialist, obviously he's been playing at a very high level lately as a wide receiver, but as a return specialist, now we're seeing him make it in the 2nd straight year. And Nik Bonitto, the guy making his debut in the Pro Bowl this year. Cody, very exciting to see him rewarded for a fantastic season, one in which we hope is capped off here in Week 18 with a handful of sacks against Carson Wentz. Look, Zach Allen got 3.5, 4 sacks against the Bengals. I think Nik Bonitto is probably looking at that and wondering, how many can I get in this game, right? And so a little stat padding here happening in Week 18, but the Pro Bowl already locked up for Nik Bonitto in year 3 for him.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think getting recognized for the Pro Bowl, I think, is a great recognition for the players. I know it doesn't hold as much weight and value as it did like back in the day when the Champ Baileys, the John Lynches were playing. It's like, hey, like being selected to a Pro Bowl was like, wow, that builds your Hall of Fame resume, essentially. Like if you're bidding to be in a Hall of Fame, like the amount of Pro Bowls you get factors into that. I think now it's shifting to all pro voting, where I think Nik Bonitto, I think Pat Surtain, I think Marvin Mims, I think Zach Allen, I think those guys will all be voted as all pros this season. That obviously is still to come here. So obviously that, it's something in the back pocket, but I just think it's incredible when you look at these guys' seasons here. Like, Sayre, let's take a look at Pat Surtain. This season, he's allowed 33 catches on 54 total targets, snagging 4 interceptions. He's only allowed 1 touchdown this year. That was to Xavier Legette against the Carolina Panthers. But he's forcing quarterbacks to have a passer rating of 56.0 when looking his way. That's pretty dang good there, according to our friends over there at NFL Next Gen Stats. Then you got Marvin Mims in terms of the return specialist, 408 return yards. That's more than he had last year when he got recognized as an All-Pro, and he also got voted to the Pro Bowl games, averaging 15.7 yards per punt return there. And then Nik Bonitto. I mean, Sayre, let's read off his stat line here in terms of impact, productivity. He's going to start opposite of TJ Watt in the Pro Bowl games here. 11.5 sacks, as we know, has a chance to up that ante here in the final regular season game against the Chiefs. 14 TFLs, which surpassed where he was at last year, 2 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, 1 interception, 2 defensive touchdowns, and 22 quarterback hits on 34 pressures. To me, like, you look at the impact that he has had, that all 3 of these guys have had on defense, or whether it be special teams, it's been big. But can we talk about snubs here as well? I think probably when you look at all the Broncos potentially in line for Pro Bowl voting, Zach Allen obviously has to be the biggest snub here. To do it has been a monster. When we talk about interior pressure, we just talk about, quarterback hits, coming off the 3.5 sack game. Zach Allen is a guy who's been putting in the dirty work all year. And we saw what it was like without Zach Allen being on the field for the one game for the Broncos. And it was like, wow, maybe he is the engine that gets that defensive line going a little bit. He's an impact player.
He really is an impact player, Cody. He's been one of the best pressure players in the NFL all season long. And obviously we've seen just a number of areas in which he has really stepped up in a big way. When you look at quarterback hits this year, every single week, Pro Football Focus puts out a graphic of, hey, this guy is leading the NFL in quarterback hits. Zach Allen has been at the top of that list basically since week 1. He's been hitting the quarterback, getting after the quarterback every single game, and no better evidence of that than this past week against the Bengals, where, like we mentioned earlier, got 3.5, 4 sacks against Joe Burrow and was all over the place in that game. And he's been making plays all year. So it's not like he's had a couple of really big games that have kind of weighted his stats heavily. He's been so consistent. And so I feel like Zach was a huge Pro Bowl snub this year. But as you mentioned, all pro still to come. I assume he will be one of those guys because, Cody, the Broncos actually released a statistic on Wednesday this past week, talking about the fact that Zach Allen has, from the interior defensive line, there's only a couple of guys in the last, since 2006, I believe, is their parameters for this stat. He's one of 5 guys with as many quarterback hits as he have. And that list includes J.J. Watt. It includes Aaron Donald and a couple of others there. So just phenomenal stuff from him this year. I know the Pro Bowl is all about fan voting and things like that, but also, too, I think there is I don't know the exact rules of this. Maybe you can help me out here, but I think there is a way for coaches to vote guys in or get guys in. And I feel like, man, how did Zach Allen not qualify for that?
Yeah, I think fans get 1/3 of the voting. I think coaches and players get 1/3 of the voting as well. And I think media gets 1/3 of the voting. So it's just kind of like 3 pieces of pie in terms of maybe how it's all split up. And look, I think anytime you get into fandom, like we even saw earlier, at one point, was it Chiefs fullback, running back, Carson Steele had a lot of votes. And it's like, okay, like it's just a popularity contest at that point. And realistically, it is a glorified popularity contest, but it is nice to see that more people are paying attention, to the Broncos. Like, even fans on the outside are like, wow, that guy's good. Like, I've seen a lot of people come out and say, wow, PS2 is the best corner in the game. You even got New York Jets fans coming out saying it, which a couple of years ago they weren't saying that because they're like sauce. But a lot of praise for Nik Bonitto, Marvin Mims. This is a fun young Broncos roster that I'm excited to see continue to develop. Let's go over some of the alternates here for Denver. Now, in terms of first alternates, Quinn Miners will be a first alternate at offensive guard, as well as long snapper Mitchell Fraboni. So that's kind of cool. Wow. When you get a long snapper in the mix as a first alternate, okay, that's pretty dope there. Denver has no second alternates there, but they do have 2 players listed as third alternates: offensive tackle Garrett Bowles, kicker Will Lutz. And Will Lutz has had a terrific season this year. I don't think he's had a miss since that blocked field goal against Kansas City. Sore subject there, but man, he's been a big deal for the Broncos. Fourth alternates. This is where I find things interesting. Quarterback Bo Nix, Zach Allen's a fourth alternate, and fullback Michael Burton. But the thing about Bo Nix, he received more votes for the Pro Bowl than Patrick Mahomes did. So I found that to be a little interesting.
That's really funny. When I heard that, I almost couldn't believe it because, I doubt Chiefs fans really care about this. Like, they don't expect their guys to go to the Pro Bowl games anyway. So why vote for them in the first place? Yeah. But at the same time, it's kind of like, it's just funny. It's kind of a cool feather in the cap to be able to say you got more Pro Bowl votes than Pat Mahomes. If anything, it shows that, a lot of times we talk about the negativity towards Bo Nix from, a lot of the minority, the loud voices, but I think it's cool to see the public really rallying around Bo Nix and Broncos country really rallying around Bo Nix and saying, hey, like, we love this guy. We got the fat heads on the wall. I'm going to do an episode one of these days from my son's room. We got the big fat head of Bo Nix on the wall in there. We've got the jerseys. Like, he's proven himself to enough of Broncos country to get that many votes. I mean, I think it's awesome, and I'm excited for him for that particular reason.
Well, Broncos country, we want to hear from you. Your thoughts on the 3 Broncos players named as starters to the NFL 2025 Pro Bowl games. Pat Surtain, Nik Bonitto, and Marvin Mims. Make sure you let us know your thoughts on that, the biggest snub as well. We're going to get into our biggest keys to victory for Sunday's game against the Kansas City Chiefs. Sayre's got his 3. I've got my 3. What are yours? We'll break it down and much more here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. Today's Locked On Broncos podcast is brought to you by our friends over there at Prize Picks, and it's playoff time. And if you're like me, you want to make the most of these final weeks of football action, and that's where Prize Picks comes in handy. If you love football and you want a chance to win real money while watching the games, Prize Picks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. With Prize Picks, you simply pick more or less on player stats like total passing yards or rushing touchdowns for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds. And whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payout or you want to cash out quickly, Prize Picks has got you covered. And with over 10 million members and billions in winnings, it's clear that people are loving this platform. So here's a special offer for Locked On NFL listeners. Download the app today and use code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Prize Picks. Run your game. Once again, download the app today. Use code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What do you want your 2025 story to be? Every January brings a new chapter, 365 blank pages waiting for you to fill. If there's a part of your life that you want to rewrite or a plot twist that you've been craving, why wait? Life isn't about fleeting resolutions. It's about taking control and becoming the author of your own story. Think of therapy as your personal editor, helping you craft the life that you deserve. It's not just for crisis situations. Therapy can help you develop healthier coping strategies, improve your relationships, and empower you to be the best version of yourself. Whether you're facing a challenge or you're just looking for personal growth, therapy is a powerful tool to help guide your journey. Whether it's learning how to set boundaries or tackling stress in new ways, therapy can help you discover skills for a better tomorrow. Even if you've never tried therapy, the benefits are clear. Finding someone to talk to and gaining fresh perspectives can make all the difference in how you navigate life's ups and downs. Write your story with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon.
If the Denver Broncos can do these few things, then we will be talking about this team being in the playoffs, and we'll be having a celebratory post-game podcast here. Let's manifest it, Broncos country, right now. We're going to talk about some keys to victory in week 18. And if the Broncos do these things, we are going to punch a ticket to the dance together. And want to just say thank you to every single one of you that's been rocking with us here at Locked On Broncos every single day. And you everydayers know that your boys, Cody and Sayre, we got you every day here on the podcast to cover all things Denver Broncos, no matter if it's the offseason, the regular season, the preseason, or hopefully soon the postseason. Hit subscribe if you haven't done so already. We got you every single day with brand new Denver Broncos content. Let's talk some keys to victory here, Cody, because, man, I think if the Broncos can do what we're saying, this menu that we've got set up here, this Michelin star menu of Broncos to-do items, if they can make these things happen, boy, it's going to be easy to go to sleep on Sunday night, and it's going to be even better to wake up on Monday morning.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing. So let's start off like you and I both did a 3 keys to victory. I'll start things off here. I think the first key here for the Broncos, Sayre, number 1, it is commit to the run game. For the offensive side of the ball, for Sean Payton, it's easy to open things up a little bit if you can commit to the run with Jaleel McLaughlin. As we saw, it was a little bit of the spark here that the Broncos needed in that Cincinnati Bengals game. He opened things up for Bo Nix to find Cortland Sutton for a touchdown, to find Marvin Mims. He put chaos, he put pressure on that Bengals defense. And you need to do that against the Kansas City Chiefs defense that, with Steve Spagnuolo, he's ultra aggressive in how he calls defenses. You can expect corner blitzes from the outside on the boundary. You can expect a nickel blitz from the field. And you can expect on third down, what do you think we're going to see? Double A gap blitzes from the linebackers. So don't make it a situation where Bo Nix has to sit here and pass the entire game. Help Bo Nix out by giving him a run game that will open up every avenue across the field for him with the various receivers that the Broncos do have. That is key number one. Key number two right here, I think it's absolutely imperative for the Broncos to shore up the communication issues that they have had on the defensive side of the ball. And really, it's, what do you get pre-snap, right? You see a formation, something changes. Ensure that everybody is on the same page. We've seen too many communication issues, sometimes on the outside. We've seen it between the safeties and the linebackers. Fix those issues, get those shored up a little bit, because teams are going to look to exploit you in that regard. And key number three here for the Broncos, I think you have to fluster Carson Wentz. Get after him. Create a lot of pressure with guys like Nik Bonitto, Jonathan Cooper. And with that increased pressure, if you can sack him, that's great. But increase that pressure and create opportunities for takeaways. Win the turnover battle. The Broncos have to do that. Look, they sacked Joe Burrow 7 times last week, and they still lost. And that's because they couldn't create takeaways and turnovers. Get both of those aspects combined this week, and better things are going to happen here for the Broncos on offense and on defense. Those are my 3 biggest keys to victory here. And if the Broncos can do 2 of those 3 keys there, I think they have a great chance to win this game here on Sunday. It's not going to be easy. I know Kansas City is going to be playing some of their backups. There's still going to be some good players. DeAndre Hopkins is going to probably play in this game. Juju Smith-Schuster will play. Kareem Hunt will probably play in this game. So those are good weapons for Carson Wentz to try to get involved with. So we'll see how things kind of pan out here on Sunday. But Sayre, your keys to victory, what do you have, my friend?
Well, I love those keys that you mentioned, Cody. And I think that when it comes to the mentality going into this game, my number one key to victory has got to be put the pedal to the metal immediately, right? Let's not mess around with any sort of, okay, we want to, make sure we're being conservative. And, we knew that there was a possibility of a tie. Don't mess around with that. Let's march right down the field. Let's get in their face, and let's be the aggressor on both sides of the ball. I think it goes hand in hand with your third key right there, Cody, in terms of getting Carson Wentz and creating turnovers. Man, the main issue with the Bengals game was that they didn't get to Joe Burrow until it was already too late. They were already basically in scoring range every time they were able to sack him, or if they were able to sack him, he was able to convert on 3rd and long. So you got to finish the job, be the aggressor. When it's 3rd and 9+, that better be just as likely the Chiefs would punt on 3rd down as they would, convert on 3rd down, because man, you don't want to see them be able to convert 3rd and long situations when you finally get them into those spots. So put the pedal to the metal is my number one key. Number 2, get off the field quickly on defense, and in so doing, create extra possessions for the offense. That's going to be crucial in a game like this. I was talking about it in our crossover Thursday episode with Chris Clark as well. But the more possessions you can create for your offense, the more opportunity they're going to have to cash in games that we've seen the Broncos win this year. The majority of them, Cody, 8 of the Broncos' 9 victories this season have been by 9 or more points. And how many of those games have the Broncos dominated the turnover battle? Or how many extra opportunities has the defense given the offense? So I think that's going to be a key in this game. Create those extra opportunities, even if you are not getting interceptions and forced fumbles early in the game. Get those guys off the field, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. Get the ball back to Bo Nix and the offense as many times as you can. My number 3 key to victory in this game is dominate time of possession and field position. This was atrocious against the Cincinnati Bengals, if we can put it that way. It was absolute garbage. When the Broncos tried to play the field position battle, Riley Dixon was terrible, had the worst game of the season. It was just awful. He set the Bengals up with prime field position almost every single time he went back there to kick the ball. So I hope Riley Dixon took last week's game personally. And for the Denver Broncos offensively, How many games have we seen them dominate this year when they can run the ball? You go all the way back to the Tampa Bay game. Man, Sayre Bedinger running all over those guys. You go back to the Saints game. It was Javonte, Jaleel McLaughlin, Bo Nix even getting involved in the running game. How many games have the Broncos dominated this year when the running game was on points? And that's just the reality of this team. When they can run the ball, man, Bo Nix working off play action. Now he's hitting some more of these deep shots. Cody, I think if we can see the Broncos win time of possession in the field position battle, they're going to be just all right in this game.
I agree with you there. And look, I think one of the keys that you mentioned about field position is crucial. Like how many times, like even in games where the Broncos have been kind of teetering on like, they might be losing momentum, the special teams unit and Riley Dixon, where they have come up big, they have a punt, it bounces, guys get it, and they pin the opposing offense within within their own 5-yard line, sometimes on the 2 or the 1. That has helped the Broncos. Like the Colts game is a great example of that because they did that on, when the Colts had all the momentum and then they almost forced a safety on Anthony Richardson. They're like, that right there has been such a crucial aspect, I think, to the success of the team this season. You've got to get back to that. But I also think that helps by not falling behind the chains here a little bit, like penalties. You can't have holding penalties, can't have false starts. Anytime we've seen the Broncos play in those situations, Sayre, where, hey, it's first down, there's a false start, 1st and 15, that's when their drive stalls and pitter patters because they have a negative play, it sets them back, and then they can't find a way to get forward. And then we look back at like those little details, as Sean Payton says, the lost yards, the hidden yards, those make a huge difference in the grand scheme of it. It comes down to discipline. And look, I think that this Broncos team, they want to get this taste out of their mouth. And look, we'll talk a little bit more about that. I've had a chance to talk to a few players in the locker room this week. We'll highlight some of that, especially as we talk about how the Broncos' performance here on Sunday's game against Kansas City, whether they win and go to the postseason or whether they lose, it will set the tone for the offseason. We'll break that down and much more here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. Today's Locked On Broncos podcast is brought to you by our friends over there at FanDuel. And as you all know it, FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and the NFL playoffs, they are almost here. We're in the final week of the NFL regular season, and it's not too late to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So all you have to do, if you sign up this week as a brand new customer over there at FanDuel, you place $5 on any game, any event, whether that's the money line, point spreads, anytime touchdown, player props, whatever it may be, and your $5 bet wins, you're going to be rewarded with $250 in bonus bets that you can use, especially for the NFL postseason. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. It's thrilling and it's fun all inside of the FanDuel Sportsbook app. They have so many different things that you can get involved with. And all you have to do, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. As we jump in the fourth quarter action on today's episode, Locked On Broncos, Sunday's game for this team, it's all or nothing. It's do or die. Week 18, win in advance. If you lose, you have to hope the results for some other teams go the opposite way. You don't want to bank on that. So what does that say about the Broncos here in Week 18? If they win, if they lose, how does it set up the offseason, which is approaching relatively quickly? We'll break that down here on today's episode of the show. Sayre, I think primarily, for the last 4 weeks, we have been saying here, and fans have kind of noticed this as well, but it's true. This is the biggest game of the Broncos season so far because there is so much at stake. The Broncos have a lot to gain, but they also have everything to lose, right? You're in this position right now where you have a chance to make it into the postseason for the first time in 9 years. A win puts you in. You've had 2 chances in the last 2 weeks to do it. You've fallen short. I've gone around and I've talked to Broncos players in the locker room this week, Sayre. And the one thing that I asked them, I said, how are you feeling about it? And guys like Nik Bonitto, they told me it's sour taste in our mouth and we got to get it out. He said, this is the week. I can't wait to do it. Guys like Cortland Sutton have come out and they said, no more talk. We got to go out there and we've got to do it. We just got to play our brand of football. And that's exactly what Denver's got to do. But I can tell you this, players in that locker room, they're not happy about the 2-game skid that they're currently experiencing. they're very, very eager to get after it. And regardless, they don't care. The Chiefs backups, Chiefs starters, they don't care. They want to come out and they got to win. And so this is a huge one here on Sunday. And if they do win, I think it still sets the tone for the offseason in an exciting way. And even if they lose, it definitely sets the tone, because then it gives you ideas as to where they can aggressively attack some areas of the operation.
Yeah, I'm not worried at all about a loss in the playoffs, Cody, because losses in the playoffs have prompted some of the greatest resurgences in Broncos history. I mean, you want to go all the way back to the 90s. They lost in the postseason to Jacksonville. And I believe the next offseason, they went out and got Neil Smith for their defense and upgraded that side of the ball. You go back to 2011, the Tim Tebow season, right? And you make the playoffs, a proof of concept that really nobody thought was even possible. Well, that caught the attention of one Peyton Manning, who joined the Denver Broncos the following offseason. 2012, you fall short against Baltimore. So what does John Elway do? He goes and gets Wes Welker, arguably the greatest slot receiver to ever do it. 2013, you fall short in the Super Bowl. So what happens? The spending spree in 2014 that ultimately led to Super Bowl 50. So losing in the postseason.
2014 also propelled them too.
Absolutely, it did. Absolutely. And those losses are things that you can learn from. And it's I know that people don't like to say, well, you can't really carry over momentum from one year to the other in the NFL, but there's a lot of continuity on this roster going forward. Like, if you look at the Broncos pending free agents for 2025, it's a lot less guys now than it was 6 months ago. So there's going to be a lot of continuity on the roster. There's going to be a lot of guys with chips on their shoulder no matter what happens. But getting to the postseason and tasting it is so critical for these guys. No matter what would happen in Buffalo, doesn't matter. Getting there and being on that stage is of the utmost importance for this team going forward.
I agree with you 100%. Look, I think one of the things when we can look at maybe some potential storylines, whether the Broncos win or lose, how it sets the tone for the offseason. I think number one, can Denver make noise in the playoffs? I think if they get in, look, we always say you just want to punch a ticket to the dance and be able to, you never know how it's going to be. Like, nobody expected the Broncos last year to go into Buffalo on Monday Night Football and beat them. They found a way to do that. Buffalo is very good. And right now on paper, if you look at Denver versus Buffalo, it doesn't look like a great matchup for Denver. And when you see how Buffalo has played teams this year, you're like, it could be a one and done situation. But as we've seen, there could be a switch that gets flipped here in the playoffs. So think about it. What if Denver goes in, makes the playoffs by beating Kansas City this week? And let's say they beat Buffalo. Like, that would be one of the biggest upsets of the entire NFL season. Imagine what that does for the narrative. Imagine what that does for the offseason. That right there could make Denver a free agent destination for a lot of different players. So that's one thing to consider. Number two, how will Denver attack the offseason? Sayre, you and I have answered it. We've had mailbag questions about it. I think this is going to be a year where the Broncos go out and they spend some big money, not like on multiple people. I think they spend big on maybe one or two positions in free agency, and then they load everything else up with the NFL draft. That's kind of where I'm feeling this direction with this team going, whether they win or whether they lose on Sunday.
I think they're going to definitely be big spenders, Cody, and I think they're going to be one of the most attractive destinations. Obviously, 2 and 3 on this list really tied together. How will they attack the offseason? And they're in position to spend big. I mean, that to me is the indicator right there that like the Broncos, they still will have $35 million in dead money from Russell Wilson's contract on the books in 2025, and yet they're still going to be top 10 in the NFL in available cap space. And I know folks are wondering, like, how are they going to be able to fit this guy and this guy and this guy on the cap going forward? And it's like, with Bo Nix's situation, you don't have to worry about that at all for the next 4 to 5 years, because even if Bo gets an extension at some point in the next 4 years, which, I mean, we're really getting ahead of ourselves here. But at that point, that extension is going to have very low hits for the first few years. And so you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff, especially with the increasing salary cap, with cash-rich ownership, and all the different reasons that players are going to want to come to Denver. Man, I think J.J. Watt brought this up, Cody, which indicates just how important this is to players going forward. The new training facility that will be ready in 2026 free agents are going to be clamoring to get to Denver to be able to have state-of-the-art, the newest facilities in the entire NFL as of next year. I know it's not 2025, but 2026, with these guys who sign multi-year deals, they're going to be living the life as far as it goes with, you have the ownership that's going to back you, that takes into account those end-of-year surveys, right? And so I think they're going to be huge spenders. I think you're going to see high-profile players coming in.
You know what I'll tell you has been a really good benefit of maybe the NFLPA and the grading survey that gets put out there is that the NFLPA will hand these out, like the results, to players every year, right? And that right there, when they're looking at it, that may influence their free agency decisions. Like, you look at like team facility, you look at training staff, strength and conditioning, you look at, the environment, post game, like, do you have a family room to, is it there adequate space? Is it accommodating to your family? Like all these other things that could be very important and higher priorities and things like money to some of these players. They're like, you know what? I want to go to a place like that. I think that's going to have to be something we look at here going forward. The Broncos, they're in a good position. And I think that Sean Payton certainly helps with that. But I also think people are seeing the emergence here of Bo Nix, and they're saying, hey, like this young player, he can play. You got a guy like Pat Surtain on defense, Nik Bonitto on defense. The nucleus of this young Broncos team, it's exciting. And I think Sunday's game, whether they win or whether they lose, will paint a very important picture for them going into the offseason.
Absolutely. And it's like you said, the nucleus is there. And that's what players around the league will want to join. Like if you can have your cake and eat it too, if you can get the free agent contract you want, or if you can go get traded to a team that will pay you, along with that team having a nucleus, having a quarterback, having stability in the coaching staff, having stability in ownership, the training staff, such an underrated piece, Cody, of this team. Like the Broncos have two guys on IR, 2 or 3 guys on IR right now, and 2 of them are healthy. I mean, Bidet is healthy, right? And Delarian Turner-Yell is healthy. The only guy that's not healthy, I believe, is working his way back is Quinn Bailey and maybe Alex Singleton as well. So you've got 2 guys healthy on IR, 2 guys unhealthy. And look at the scope of the entire NFL, how large these factors are going to loom for free agents. I don't think Broncos country can comprehend just yet the training facility, the cash available, the training staff and keeping guys healthy, the presence of a quarterback, the head coach. I mean, all of it is working in the Broncos' favor to have maybe the most exciting offseason that we have seen in quite some time.
We're excited for Broncos country. We hope you are as well. Whether the team wins or loses, we know we got you covered every single day, all year long, especially throughout the entire offseason. Hopefully, we can have a postseason coverage here of your favorite team every single day on the Locked On Broncos podcast. With that said, Broncos country, that'll wrap up today's episode of the show. The next time you'll see Sayre and myself, unless there's breaking news in between now and when the game starts on Sunday against Kansas City, you'll get the post-game report following that. Week 18, the Broncos, Chiefs, 2:25 p.m. Mountain Time kickoff. You'll get all the action and the recap here, Locked On Broncos. We appreciate you so much, all the everydayers, all the first listeners. Thanks for rocking with us. We'll see you next time.